The wedding album landed in a puddle. 47 years of memories turned gray with dirty water. Martha Williams, 72, stood in the November rain, watching her life scattered on the sidewalk. Beside her, Thomas held her hand too tight, the grip of a man trying not to fall apart. Richard Hastings, property manager, stood in the doorway of Riverside Towers, dry, smiling. "People like you don't fit our new demographic," he announced to the growing crowd. Phones out, recording, nobody helping. Martha whispered, "Our son is coming." Richard laughed. "The white boy who pretends to love you, he's probably embarrassed to claim you." The crowd of 60 waited, watched. Richard had no idea what was about to happen. No idea that the son he mocked had been planning this moment for 7 years. No idea he was about to destroy himself on camera. 47 years earlier, Martha Williams had taken the janitor job at Riverside Towers because they needed the money. Thomas's salary as a maintenance worker barely covered rent and food. Martha's income would mean they could save, maybe even buy their own place someday. The building was new then, 1977. 12 stories of modern apartments in Chicago's West Side. Mixed-income housing, an experiment in integration. Some units affordable, some market rate. Black families, white families, everyone living together. It was supposed to be the future. It mostly worked. Martha cleaned apartments, scrubbed floors, emptied trash, invisible work done by invisible people. She didn't mind. Work was work. And Riverside Towers was better than most places. The residents were mostly kind. The building was clean, safe. A good place to raise a family, if they ever had children, but they couldn't. 3 miscarriages in 5 years, each one breaking a piece of Martha's heart. The doctors said it was unlikely she'd carry to term, suggested adoption. But adoption agencies in 1980 didn't place children with black couples easily, especially not when those couples were janitors and maintenance workers. So Martha cleaned apartments and tried not to think about the nursery that would stay empty. Thomas fixed pipes and pretended it didn't hurt. Then came November 15th, 1991. Martha was cleaning the basement storage area. It was late, past 10 p.m. Most residents were asleep. The building was quiet except for the hum of machinery and the distant sound of traffic from the street above. The basement smelled like concrete and old paint, cold, damp. The kind of place you cleaned quickly and left. Martha was emptying trash bins when she heard it. Crying, not adult crying, baby crying, but wrong somehow, weak, desperate, almost hopeless. The sound of a child who'd been crying so long they'd almost given up, who'd screamed until their voice gave out and now could only manage these small, broken sounds. Martha froze, listened. The crying was coming from the dumpster area, a corner of the basement where construction debris was stored during renovations. She walked slowly, her heart pounding. The crying got louder, more desperate, like the child could hear her footsteps, could sense someone coming. Martha followed the sound to the green industrial dumpster, the kind used for renovation debris. Heavy, metal, the lid closed. The crying was coming from inside. Martha's hands shook as she opened the lid. The smell hit her first. Human waste, garbage, something sweet and rotten. Inside, buried under construction debris and garbage bags, was a baby. Maybe 2 years old, white, blonde hair matted with dirt, blue eyes wide with fear and pain, wearing only a diaper, full, overflowing, causing a rash that covered his small legs, a thin t-shirt that said, "Mommy's little man," no shoes, no blanket, no jacket. In November, in Chicago, his skin was grayish blue, hypothermic. His lips were cracked and bleeding, dehydrated. He'd been there for hours, maybe longer, long enough that he'd stopped screaming, long enough that he'd given up hope. But when he saw Martha, something changed in his eyes. Recognition, not of her specifically, but of what she represented. Help, safety, a chance. Martha screamed. Then Thomas came running. Together they pulled the boy out, called 911, rushed him to the hospital. The doctors said another hour and he would have died. The police investigated, found security footage showing a woman entering the basement at 8 p.m., expensive clothes, sunglasses indoors. She'd carried a sleeping child, left 5 minutes later without him. The footage was grainy. They couldn't identify her, but they found something else. A blanket in the dumpster, monogrammed. V.S. The baby was placed in foster care while police searched for the parents. But nobody came forward. No missing child reports. No anxious parents. Nothing. Just a toddler abandoned like trash. The system planned to place him in the foster system permanently. Martha couldn't sleep. Every night she saw that baby's face, heard his cries, and felt his small body shaking with cold and fear. "We should adopt him," she told Thomas one morning. They were lying in bed, early light filtering through worn curtains. Thomas was quiet for a long time. "Martha, we're black, he's white. The system won't—" "I don't care what the system will or won't do," Martha interrupted. "That baby was left to die in our building, in our care, and we saved him. He's ours." Thomas turned to look at her, saw the determination in her eyes, the love already there for a child they barely knew. "Okay," he said. "Okay." The adoption process took 18 months. Social workers questioned everything. Why would a black couple want a white child? Weren't they worried about cultural issues? About the child feeling out of place? About what people would say? That Martha answered every question the same way. "Because he's my son. That's all that matters." In June 1993, David Williams officially became their son, 2 years old, starting to talk, still having nightmares about the dark, about being cold, about being alone, but alive, safe, loved. They threw a party in Riverside Towers. Residents brought food, gifts, celebrated the family that had formed in the most unlikely way. Mrs. Chen from 4B made dumplings. The Rodriguez family from 7A brought tamales. The Johnsons from 2C bought a toy truck that David would play with until the wheels fell off. It was perfect. Everyone said so. Look at this beautiful family. Look at how love transcends race. Look at this miracle. But miracles don't protect you from the world. David grew up black in a white body. That's how Martha thought of it. He went to predominantly black schools, played with black kids, learned black history as his history, heard the same warnings every black parent gives their children about police, about being careful, about understanding that the world would judge him by his parents' skin color even if it didn't judge him by his own. "You're going to have privilege," Thomas told him when he was 10. "White privilege. Use it to protect people who don't have it. Use it to open doors that are closed to others. Never forget where you came from, who raised you, what you owe." David listened, learned. When other white kids at his magnet high school made racist jokes, he shut them down. When college friends assumed he'd think like them, talk like them, share their casual prejudices, he corrected them. When law school classmates were surprised he came from the West Side, from working-class parents, from Riverside Towers, he educated them. And when he made his first million at 28, tech startup, brilliant algorithm, impeccable timing, he remembered the dumpster, the cold, the sound of his mother's voice when she first held him. "You're safe now, baby. Mama's got you." He bought Riverside Towers first, paid twice what it was worth because he wanted to make sure no corporate developer could touch it. Wanted to guarantee his parents would never have to leave the place where their family began. Then he started buying the surrounding blocks. Quietly, through shell companies. 12 blocks total, $340 million in real estate. Everyone assumed it was a developer, some corporation planning to gentrify the neighborhood, to tear down affordable housing, build luxury condos, price out the people who'd lived there for generations. David let them think that, because he had a different plan. A plan he'd been working on for 7 years. A plan that would honor his parents, protect the community, and expose the woman who'd left him to die. Because David had found her, Victoria Sterling, his biological mother, CEO of Sterling Development. Net worth, $800 million. Built on real estate development across the Midwest. She'd abandoned him in 1991 because he was inconvenient. A mistake. Something that would complicate her career trajectory and marriage to Theodore Sterling, a real estate magnate 20 years her senior. She'd tried to make him disappear. Thought she had. Never once checked to see if the baby in the dumpster had survived. Never felt guilt. She never looked back. David had spent 5 years tracking her, building a case, waiting for the right moment. Then Victoria made a mistake. She tried to buy Riverside Towers, sent her people to make offers. When they were refused, because David owned it through a shell company, she sent other people, lawyers, inspectors, code enforcement, trying to pressure the building into selling. That's when David hired Richard Hastings. Richard was Victoria's man, a property manager she'd used on other projects, ruthless, efficient, willing to do whatever it took to clear buildings for renovation. David hired him specifically, told him the building was being sold to Sterling Development, that his job was to prepare for renovation, to encourage existing tenants to leave, to make the building ready for Victoria's takeover. Richard took the job enthusiastically, started raising rents, harassing tenants, finding violations that didn't exist, creating conditions that would drive people out, and David documented everything, waited. Let Richard dig his own grave. Let Victoria expose herself. Because the moment she crossed the line, the moment she did something undeniably illegal publicly, with witnesses, he'd have her. That moment came on November 15th, 2024. 33 years to the day since Martha had found David in the dumpster. Richard had been escalating for weeks, threatening tenants, cutting utilities, creating emergencies that made apartments uninhabitable. Most tenants left, took buyouts, found new places. The building was 70% empty now, but Thomas and Martha refused to leave. This was their home. They'd raised their son here, built their life, but they weren't leaving. Not for money, not for threats, not for anything. So Richard decided to force them out. He showed up at 8 a.m. with 2 security guards and an eviction notice, a fake eviction notice. David would later prove it was forged. But Martha and Thomas didn't know that. They just knew they were being ordered to leave, immediately, with only what they could carry. "You have 30 minutes, Richard said, standing in their doorway. The apartment they'd lived in for 47 years. The apartment where they'd raised David, where he'd taken his first steps, spoken his first words, grown from a traumatized toddler into a man who'd changed the world. "This is illegal," Thomas said. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. "We have rights." "You have whatever rights I decide you have," Richard replied. "Now pack, or I'll have security remove you forcibly." Martha had called David, her son, her baby, the most powerful person she knew. But he hadn't answered, didn't call back. She didn't know why. Couldn't know that David was in a meeting 6 blocks away, that his assistant had strict orders not to interrupt, that this was all part of the plan, that David had known this was coming, had arranged for news cameras to be nearby, for witnesses, for documentation, that he was timing everything perfectly. Martha just knew her son wasn't answering, and she and Thomas were alone. They packed what they could: clothes, photos, the wedding album, Thomas's tools, Martha's Bible, small things that represented a life. Richard watched them, smirking. When they were too slow, he had the security guards start throwing things into the hallway. Boxes tumbling downstairs, glass breaking, a lifetime of memories treated like garbage. The crowd started gathering as they moved things to the sidewalk. Residents who were left, neighbors from other buildings, people drawn by the commotion, by the spectacle of elderly black people being removed from their home. And Richard played to the crowd, made it a show. "This is progress," he announced. "Out with the old, in with the new. This building is being transformed. If you can't keep up, you don't belong here." The rain started as they put the last box on the sidewalk. cold November rain. The kind Chicago is famous for. The kind that makes you understand why people leave the Midwest. Martha's wedding album was the last thing. Richard had grabbed it from her hands, thrown it into the street, laughed as it landed in a puddle. "Welcome to the new America," he said, "where your kind doesn't get to stay comfortable anymore." Your kind. The crowd murmured, some uncomfortable, some agreeing, most just filming. Content, drama, suffering reduced to entertainment. Thomas pulled Martha close. They stood in the rain, two elderly people surrounded by their belongings, watching their life get soaked, destroyed, and Richard stood in the doorway, dry, victorious. "Where's your son now?" he called out. "The white boy who pretends to love you? Why isn't he here saving you?" Martha didn't answer, just held Thomas's hand and prayed David would come. That somehow this would be okay, that the son they'd saved from a dumpster would save them from this humiliation. The crowd was 50 people now, maybe 60. Someone had called the news. A van was pulling up, satellite dish on top. A camera crew unloading. A reporter adjusting her hair, checking her microphone. This was going to be a story. Richard saw them. His smile widened. This was perfect. Better than perfect. He was going to be on TV, showing the world how tough he was, how he didn't let sentiment stand in the way of progress, how he was the kind of manager who got results. A woman in the crowd was crying. She looked about 40, black, holding a little girl's hand. "This is wrong," she said. Not to anyone in particular, just to the air, to God, to whoever was listening. "They're old. It's cold. This is wrong." Her daughter asked, "Mommy, why is that man being mean to the grandma and grandpa?" "Because some people are mean, baby. Some people forget to be human." A young man, maybe 20, wearing a delivery uniform, pulled out his phone, started live streaming. Y'all seeing this? Riverside Towers. Property manager throwing out elderly black residents in the rain. This is gentrification in real time. This is what they mean when they say development. His viewer count climbed. 100, 500, 1,000, 2,000. Comments flooding in. "This is disgusting. Someone help them. Where are their kids?" I hope karma gets that manager. But nobody in the physical crowd moved. Nobody intervened. They just watched, recorded, turned suffering into content. This was America in 2024, documenting everything, helping nothing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard addressed the crowd like he was giving a TED Talk. "What you're witnessing is the future of Chicago. No more coddling. No more letting people stay in places they can't afford just because they've been here a long time. If you can't pay, you can't stay." Simple economics. Someone in the crowd shouted, "They're old. It's raining. Have some decency." Richard laughed. "Decency doesn't pay bills. Decency doesn't build cities. Decency is what's held this neighborhood back for decades." A news reporter approached. Microphone extended, camera rolling. "Sir, can you explain what's happening here?" "Absolutely," Richard said, straightening his tie. "I'm Richard Hastings, property manager of Riverside Towers. We're undergoing a major renovation to bring this building into the 21st century. Part of that process involves transitioning out tenants who don't fit our new standards." "By throwing elderly residents into the rain?" the reporter pressed. "By following proper legal procedures," Richard said smoothly. "These individuals were given multiple notices, multiple opportunities to relocate with generous buyouts. They refused, so we're proceeding with eviction." "Do you have an eviction order?" Richard pulled out the forged document, held it up to the camera. "Right here, signed by the property owner. Everything is legal and proper." The reporter turned to Martha and Thomas. "Sir, ma'am, do you have any comment?" Thomas opened his mouth. Martha squeezed his hand. A signal. Wait. Their son was coming. He had to be coming. This wasn't how their story ended. "We've lived here for 47 years, Thomas said quietly. "Raised our son here. This is our home." "Your son," Richard made air quotes. "Tell them about your son. Tell them how you—" He didn't finish, because a car pulled up. Black Mercedes S-Class, tinted windows. It stopped directly in front of Riverside Towers. The crowd parted. So the camera swung toward the car. The driver's door opened, and David Williams stepped out. 35 years old, 6 feet tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, Armani suit that cost more than most people made in a month. White. Undeniably, unmistakably white. He looked at his parents, at Martha and Thomas standing in the rain, at their belongings scattered on the sidewalk, at the wedding album in the puddle. His face was completely calm. That's what Richard would remember later. Not angry, not shocked, just calm, like he'd expected exactly this. "Mom," David said quietly. "Dad, are you okay?" Martha started crying. Relief, love, the overwhelming emotion of seeing your child when you need them most. "Baby," she said, "we're okay. We're okay now." David walked to them, took off his coat, wrapped it around Martha's shoulders. It was cashmere. Well, probably cost $3,000. He draped his suit jacket over Thomas, didn't seem to notice or care that he was getting soaked. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said. "Are you hurt? Did anyone touch you?" "We're fine," Thomas said. His voice was thick with emotion. "Just wet." David nodded. Then he turned to face Richard Hastings. The crowd had gone completely silent, phones raised higher, the news cameras zooming in. This was about to be good. "Mr. Hastings," David said. His voice was pleasant, conversational. "I believe you're throwing my parents out of their home." Richard's smile faltered. Wait, these are your parents?" "Yes, Thomas and Martha Williams. They adopted me when I was 2 years old, saved my life, raised me, gave me everything I have. So yes, these are my parents." He paused. "And you just threw them into the street in the rain, on camera, in front of 60 witnesses and a news crew." Richard was recovering, calculating. "Look, I didn't know they were your parents, but it doesn't change anything. The building is being renovated. They were given notice." "By who?" David interrupted. "Who gave you the authority to evict them?" "The property owner, Victoria Sterling of Sterling Development. I have documentation." "Show me." Richard pulled out papers. David examined them. His face remained calm. "These documents say the eviction was authorized by the property owner. That's correct?" "Yes." "And you're acting on behalf of Sterling Development?" "Yes." "Under whose instruction?" "Victoria Sterling herself. She hired me to prepare this building for acquisition and renovation. My job is to clear out the old tenants." David nodded slowly, pulled out his phone. He's made a call. "Ms. Sterling, David Williams?" "Yes. I'm at Riverside Towers. Your property manager just evicted my parents. I thought you might want to be here for this." He listened. "Oh, you're already nearby? Wonderful. Please join us." He hung up, looked at Richard. "She'll be here in 2 minutes. This should be interesting." The crowd was buzzing now, confused, excited, sensing drama. The news reporter was asking questions David couldn't hear. Someone was filming everything, the live stream viewer count climbing. Martha touched David's arm. "Baby, what's happening?" "Justice, Mom," David said quietly. 33 years late, but justice. A town car pulled up. Black Lincoln. A woman stepped out. 60 years old, platinum blonde, expensive everything. Botox, designer clothes, the kind of wealth that looks cold even in November rain. Victoria Sterling. She looked at the scene, at Richard standing in the doorway, at the elderly black couple on the sidewalk, at David. Her eyes lingered on David, something flickering there. Recognition? Fear? She couldn't know. Couldn't possibly know. "Mr. Williams," she said, her voice crisp, professional. "I apologize for this situation. I wasn't aware these individuals were connected to you. I'm sure we can reach an accommodation." "Individuals?" David repeated. These individuals are my parents, the people who raised me, who saved my life, and your employee just threw them into the street. A misunderstanding, Victoria said smoothly. Richard was following my instructions to clear the building, but certainly we can make exceptions. Exceptions, David said. Interesting. Tell me, Ms. Sterling, do you always make exceptions for tenants? Or just when someone important is watching? Victoria's eyes narrowed. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You hired Richard Hastings to force tenants out of Riverside Towers. Elderly tenants. Poor tenants. Black and brown tenants. You've been using illegal tactics, fake eviction notices, harassment, code violations that don't exist, to clear the building. And today, you went too far. He pulled out his phone, pulled up documents. These are the eviction papers Richard just showed me. They're forged. The signature is fake. The court stamp is fake. Everything about them is fake. Which means this isn't eviction. It's illegal removal, theft, elder abuse, and it's all documented. He gestured to the crowd, to the cameras. By about 60 witnesses. Victoria's face had gone pale. That's ridiculous. Richard, tell him. Richard works for you, David interrupted. Everything he's done under your instruction. Right, Richard? Richard was backing away, hands up. I was following orders. Following orders, David repeated. Interesting defense. Didn't work at Nuremberg. Probably won't work here. The crowd was dead silent now. Everyone sensing something bigger than a simple eviction dispute. Victoria was looking at David with something like recognition. You look familiar, she said slowly. Have we met? Once, David said. November 15th, 1991. You were wearing sunglasses, carrying a child. Me. You brought me to the basement of Riverside Towers and left me in a dumpster to die. I was 2 years old. The crowd gasped, and the news camera zoomed in tight. Victoria's face went from pale to gray. That's insane. I don't know what you left me to die, David continued, his voice calm, relentless. In the basement of this building, under construction debris and trash, wearing only a diaper and a t-shirt, hypothermic, dehydrated. Another hour and I would have died. He turned to Martha and Thomas. But my mother found me. Martha Williams, a janitor. She heard me crying. She and my father, Thomas Williams, the maintenance supervisor, pulled me out, saved my life, called 911, and then they adopted me, gave me a home, a family, everything you refused to give me. Victoria was shaking her head. You can't prove DNA, David said. He held up his phone. I had it tested years ago. You're my biological mother. Theodore Sterling, your late husband. I was my biological father. You abandoned me because I was inconvenient, because you didn't want children interfering with your career. The crowd was erupting now, people shouting, the news reporter firing questions. Victoria was backing toward her car. This is slander. I'll sue you for what? Telling the truth? David stepped closer. I've spent 5 years investigating you, Victoria. I know everything. The real estate schemes, the money laundering, the fraud, and I know something else, something you've managed to hide for 29 years. He pulled out a folder, held it up. Theodore Sterling didn't die of a heart attack in 1995. You poisoned him. Antifreeze in his evening brandy. Mimics heart attack symptoms perfectly. You inherited $400 million. Used it to build Sterling Development. You built your empire on murder. Victoria's face had gone completely white. You can't. There's no proof. There is now, David said. I had Theodore's body exhumed 6 months ago, paid for a full toxicology screen. Guess what they found? He opened the folder, showed papers to the camera. Ethylene glycol, consistent with antifreeze poisoning. The levels are unmistakable. You killed your husband, my biological father, and you've been living off his money ever since. The crowd was in chaos now. Police sirens in the distance. David had called them 20 minutes ago. Victoria was running to her car. Richard was trying to disappear into the crowd. But David wasn't done. One more thing, he called out. his voice cutting through the noise. Riverside Towers, the building you've been trying to take over? I own it, have for 7 years. And bought it through a shell company specifically to protect my parents, to make sure they'd never lose their home. He turned to the crowd, to the camera. I also own the 12 blocks surrounding this building. $340 million in real estate. Everyone thought some developer was buying it up, planning to gentrify, force people out, build luxury condos. He smiled. It wasn't warm. That developer was me, but I wasn't planning to gentrify. I was planning to preserve. The Williams Legacy District. 12 blocks of protected affordable housing, community centers, small business incubators. 100% of current tenants offered lease renewals at their current rates, forever. The crowd was stunned, silent. I've been documenting Sterling Development's illegal tactics for 18 months, David continued. The harassment, the fake violations, the forged eviction notices. Richard Hastings has been working for me the whole time, recording everything Victoria ordered him to do, every illegal instruction, every harassment campaign, every fake document. Richard's jaw dropped. What? No, I was working for Sterling. You were working for me, David said. I hired you, told you that you were preparing the building for Sterling Development. Let you think Victoria was your boss. But every conversation you had with her, recorded, every email, saved, every illegal action, documented. He turned to Victoria. You spent 33 years thinking you got away with murder, with abandonment, with building an empire on stolen money and illegal tactics. Today, in front of 60 witnesses and a news crew, you're finally caught. FBI agents were moving through the crowd, and they'd been waiting. Part of David's plan. They approached Victoria. Victoria Sterling, you're under arrest for the murder of Theodore Sterling. You have the right to remain silent. Victoria was screaming about lawyers, about this being a setup, about how David couldn't do this. But the agents didn't care. They cuffed her, led her to a waiting car. Richard was being arrested too. Fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse. The charges would take hours to read. The crowd was exploding. Phones everywhere. The news reporter doing a live update. Breaking news from Chicago's West Side. A billionaire real estate developer has just been arrested for murder, and the story behind it is extraordinary. David turned to his parents. Martha was crying. Thomas was holding her, both of them soaked, surrounded by their belongings, and their life scattered on the sidewalk. Let's go home, David said quietly. The cleanup took hours. David's team arrived within minutes. Moving company, cleaners, people to sort through the soggy belongings and restore what could be restored. The wedding album couldn't be saved. The water damage was too severe. David had it carefully dried and preserved anyway. Then he hired an artist to recreate each page, every photo, every memory. It took 6 months and cost $50,000. Martha cried when she saw it. The video went viral. Billionaire exposes mother who abandoned him. Real estate CEO arrested for murder. The dumpster baby who bought his neighborhood. Within 24 hours, it had 200 million views. News outlets worldwide picked it up. Oprah called. Ellen called. 60 Minutes wanted to do a full feature. David turned them all down. This isn't about me, he told his publicist. It's about my parents, about the people Victoria tried to destroy, about justice. But he did do one interview with the local Chicago News, the reporter who'd been there that day. She came to Riverside Towers, met Thomas and Martha, heard their story. Why adopt a white child? She asked Martha. It was the question everyone asked. Always. Martha smiled, touched the photo of 2-year-old David, pulled from the dumpster, blue eyes wide with trauma and fear. I didn't adopt a white child, she said. I adopted my son. His skin color never mattered, not to me, not to Thomas. He was a baby who needed a mother. I was a mother who needed a baby. Everything else is just noise. The interview aired on a Sunday night, got 15 million views. Comments poured in, most supportive, some racist, and some questioning whether David was really black, if he was raised by black parents. David responded on Twitter, "Race is complicated. Identity is personal. I'm a white man raised in Black America. I have white privilege and a Black family. I understand both worlds, and I use that understanding to fight for justice. That's all that matters." The response was overwhelming. Messages from other transracial adoptees, from white people raised in Black families, from Black people raised in white families, from everyone in between, saying thank you, saying I see you, saying you're not alone. But David didn't care about the viral moment, didn't care about the views. He cared about the trials. Victoria's trial came first. Murder. The evidence was overwhelming. Exhumed body, toxicology reports, financial records showing Victoria had motive. Theodore's will left everything to her, but only if he died within 5 years of their marriage. He died in year 4. Witnesses testified. The bartender who'd noticed Victoria always made Theodore's drinks herself. The accountant who'd seen her researching untraceable poisons on her work computer. The police report from 1995 that had noted inconsistencies but never investigated. The defense tried everything, claimed the exhumation was illegal, that David had corrupted the evidence, that this was a vendetta by an abandoned child. The jury didn't buy it. They deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty. First-degree murder. The judge was a woman in her 70s, Black. She'd grown up in Chicago's West Side. "Miss Sterling," she said, her voice cold, "you murdered your husband for money. You abandoned your child to die. You built an empire on fraud and cruelty. You targeted vulnerable communities, poor people, elderly people, Black and brown people, because you thought they couldn't fight back." She paused. "You were wrong. Life without parole. No possibility of early release. May you spend the rest of your days contemplating the evil you committed." Victoria was led away. Didn't look at David. Didn't look at anyone. Just stared straight ahead like she was already dead. Richard's trial was shorter. He took a plea deal, testified against Victoria, got 15 years, would probably serve 8 with good behavior. Still enough to destroy his career, his reputation, his future. The Sterling development empire collapsed, assets seized, properties sold. The $180 million in laundered money recovered and distributed to victims, including the 200-plus families Victoria had illegally evicted over the years. And Riverside Towers? David kept his promise. The Williams Legacy District opened in June 2025. 12 blocks of protected housing. Every original tenant offered their apartment back at 2019 rates. Community centers, small business incubators, a public library named after Martha Williams, a technical school named after Thomas Williams, free tutoring, free childcare, everything a community needs to thrive. The project cost $340 million. David didn't make a penny. That wasn't the point. The point was proving that development doesn't have to mean displacement, that you can build up without pushing out, that profit and people aren't mutually exclusive, unless you only care about profit. And the media called him a hero, a saint, the future of ethical development. David called himself a son repaying a debt. "My parents saved my life," he said in every interview. "They gave me everything. This is the least I can do." But Martha disagreed. She and Thomas were in their apartment, the same apartment they'd lived in for 47 years. Newly renovated, fresh paint, new floors, but the same bones, the same home. "You don't owe us anything, baby," Martha told David. They were having Sunday dinner, a tradition they'd maintained every week for 33 years. "You gave us everything we ever wanted, a son, a family, a purpose." "I was left in a dumpster," David said quietly. "Abandoned, left to die. You didn't have to save me, didn't have to adopt me, didn't have to love me." Martha reached across the table, took his hand. "When I found you," she said, "you were crying. But when I picked you up, you stopped. You looked at me with those big blue eyes, and you smiled. Like you knew, like you'd been waiting for me." She squeezed his hand. "I didn't save you, David. We saved each other. I was a woman who wanted to be a mother. You were a baby who needed a mother. That's not charity. That's not even rescue. That's just family. Thomas nodded. Your skin color? Never mattered. Not for a second. You were ours from the moment we found you. Would have been ours if you were purple with orange spots. That's what family is. Choice, commitment, love. Everything else is just noise. David felt tears on his face. 35 years old, billionaire, power broker, crying at his parents' dinner table like he was 6. I love you, he said. I know, baby, Martha said. We love you too. They ate, talked, laughed. A black couple in their 70s, a white man in his 30s, a family that looked like nothing and meant everything. After dinner, David walked through the building. His building. The place where he'd almost died. The place where he'd been saved. The place where he'd become who he was. Residents stopped him, thanked him, told him stories about Martha and Thomas, about how they'd helped everyone, fixed things, provided food when people were struggling, babysat kids, created community. Your parents are saints, Mrs. Chen from 4B said. She was 85 now, had been Martha's friend for 40 years. They made this building a home, not just a place to live, a home. David smiled. I know. You did good, Mrs. Chen continued, protecting us, fighting for us. Your parents raised you right. They did, David agreed. They really did. He took the elevator to the basement, the storage area, the place where Martha had found him 33 years ago. The dumpster was gone now, replaced with a small memorial, a plaque. On this spot, November 15th, 1991, Martha Williams found David Williams. A life was saved. A family was born. Love triumphed over abandonment. This is where our story begins. David stood in front of it, thought about the baby he'd been, freezing, crying, dying, thought about the woman who'd heard him, who'd saved him, who'd become his mother, thought about Victoria Sterling, in prison, alone, probably still not understanding what she'd done wrong, probably still thinking she was the victim. You threw away the best thing that ever could have happened to you, David said quietly to the empty air. And Martha and Thomas, they got everything they ever wanted. So who really won? He didn't need an answer. He already knew. David went back upstairs, to his parents' apartment. They were cleaning up from dinner, moving slowly. 72 was old, even for people who'd lived good lives. Stay tonight, Martha said. Your room is still here. David's room, the second bedroom, where he'd slept for 16 years before leaving for college. It still had his posters, his books, the toy truck from his adoption party. Okay, David said. Okay. He slept in his childhood bed, heard his parents moving around in the next room, heard their quiet conversations, their laughter, the sounds of a life well lived. And he thought, this is what family sounds like. Not blood, not DNA, not shared features or ancestry, just love, choice, commitment, the decision to see someone, to save someone, to make them yours. Victoria had thrown him away. Martha had picked him up. That was the only difference that mattered. 5 years later, David stood at a podium in Washington, D.C. congressional hearing on housing policy. He'd been invited to testify about the Williams Legacy District, about alternative development models, about what was possible when profit wasn't the only motive. The room was packed. Senators, representatives, housing advocates, developers, the press. Everyone wanted to hear from the man who'd exposed his mother and rebuilt his neighborhood. Members of Congress, David began, I want to tell you about a woman named Martha Williams. She was a janitor, made minimum wage, lived in affordable housing. By most economic measures, she was invisible, worthless, someone the system was designed to overlook. He paused. She saved my life. Not metaphorically, literally. She found me in a dumpster, dying, and she didn't walk away. She didn't call someone else. She picked me up. She saved me. And then she and her husband, a maintenance worker equally invisible, adopted me, raised me, gave me everything. I'm a billionaire now. I built that wealth on the foundation they gave me, the values they taught me, the love they showed me. But none of that would exist if Martha had walked past that dumpster. If she'd decided I wasn't worth the trouble. If she'd let the system handle it. The Williams Legacy District exists because I believe everyone deserves what Martha gave me. As a safe home, a supportive community, the opportunity to thrive, not as charity, not as some benevolent gift from above, but as a basic human right. Current housing policy treats people like Martha as expendable, as obstacles to development, as problems to be solved by displacement. We tear down affordable housing, force people out, build luxury units, and call it progress. But what if progress meant something different? What if it meant protecting the people who make communities work? The janitors and maintenance workers and teachers and nurses? The people who hold everything together while everyone else chases profit? He looked directly at the camera, at the millions watching. I'm proposing the Martha Williams Housing Act, federal funding for community-led development, tax incentives for preservation over displacement, criminal penalties for the kind of harassment and fraud that my biological mother used, protection for tenants, power for communities. Some will say it's too expensive, that we can't afford it, but we can afford tax cuts for billionaires, subsidies for corporations, endless money for everything except the people who need it most. Martha Williams saved my life with nothing but minimum wage and a willing heart. Imagine what we could do with actual resources. The speech went viral. Within a week, the Martha Williams Housing Act had 50 co-sponsors. Within a month, 100. Within 6 months, it passed both houses. President signed it into law. $50 billion in funding over 10 years for community-led development, for tenant protection, for proving that development doesn't have to mean displacement. Martha watched the signing ceremony on TV from her apartment in Riverside Towers, Thomas beside her, David on screen, standing behind the president, watching the pen move across paper, making his mother's name law. "Look at our boy," Thomas said. His voice was thick with emotion. Martha was crying, happy tears, proud tears. "We did good, Thomas." "Yes," he agreed. "We did." David came home that night, Sunday dinner. The tradition continued. He was 40 now. Martha and Thomas were 77, moving slower, sleeping more, but still there, still strong, still the foundation of everything David was. "The act is going to change millions of lives," David said. They were eating Martha's pot roast, the same recipe she'd been making for 50 years. Communities all over the country can protect themselves now, keep their homes. I stay together. "That's good," Martha said. "That's real good, baby." "But I have a question," David continued. "Why? Why did you save me? You could have just called the police, let someone else handle it. Why risk everything to adopt a child who didn't look like you? Who the system didn't want you to have?" Martha set down her fork, looked at her son. "Because when I found you, you were crying. And when I picked you up, you stopped. You looked at me. And I knew. This is my baby. This is my son. Nothing else mattered." "But, David," Thomas interrupted, "you're asking the wrong question. You're asking why we saved you. Like there was a choice. Like we had to think about it. But there was no choice. You were a baby, in trouble. We helped. That's what you do. That's what humans do. Or should do." He paused. "The real question is why Victoria didn't, why she threw you away, why she valued her career over her child, why she thought money was worth more than love." "That's the sickness," Martha added. "Not us loving you, but her abandoning you. That's what needs explaining. That's what needs fixing." David nodded slowly, understanding. "The system that told her a child was disposable. That's what you're fighting against." "Yes," Martha said. "That's exactly it. And you're winning." Every family that keeps their home because of the Housing Act. Every community that stays together. Every child who grows up safe. That's winning. Victoria lost everything chasing money, Thomas said. We gained everything chasing love. Which one of us is richer? David smiled. You are, obviously. Exactly, Martha said. So stop asking why we saved you. I start asking how we can save more people. Because that's the work. That's what matters. They finished dinner, cleaned up together. David in his suit jacket, Martha in her apron, Thomas in his work shirt, a family that looked like nothing and changed everything. After, David went to the basement again, to the memorial, to the place where his story began. Someone had left flowers, a note. Thank you for saving our neighborhood. Thank you for proving love matters more than money. Thank you for being proof that family is choice, not blood. David didn't know who'd left it. Didn't need to. The message was universal, timeless. The same message Martha had taught him 33 years ago when she'd pulled him from a dumpster and made him hers. Love is a choice. Family is a choice. Justice is a choice. And choosing right, choosing love, choosing people over profit. That's how you change the world. One baby at a time. One family at a time. One neighborhood at a time. David stood in the basement of Riverside Towers, in the place where he'd almost died, in the place where he'd been saved. And he thought about all the other babies, all the other Davids, abandoned, overlooked, discarded, all the people Victoria Sterling had tried to erase, all the families she'd tried to destroy. They didn't all have Martha Williams. They didn't all have Thomas. They didn't all get saved. But maybe the Martha Williams Housing Act would save some of them. Maybe community-led development would protect some of them. Maybe proving that family is choice, not blood, would inspire some of them. Maybe one person at a time, one choice at a time, one act of love at a time, the world could change. Victoria Sterling had tried to build an empire on cruelty, on abandonment, on the belief that some people matter and some don't. She'd failed, died in prison, alone, forgotten. Martha and Thomas Williams had built an empire on love, on seeing people, on believing everyone matters. They'd succeeded, created a son who changed the world, created a legacy that would outlive them all. The question wasn't which approach was moral, it was which approach worked. The answer was obvious. Love won, every single time.